Okay. My first handful of questions are for Mr. Johnson. Christopher's defense team has said in the past the shooting was justified because it was self-defense. What is your response to that? And in your opinion, what would ever justify an officer taking a person's life, execution style?
Well, it's not just my opinion, but it's the law, federal law and state law, of course. And that is, an officer can only use deadly force if that officer reasonably believes that his or her life is in imminent danger, meaning right then, right there. So in essence, for the criminal jury and then later on in life, our civil jury, the number one issue is going to be, was Schurr, because he's going to come in and say, Schurr's going to come in and say, I thought he was going to kill me. With what? Patrick was on hands and knees down on the ground. Schurr's on top of him. They're going to say, and Schurr's going to say, that Patrick had the taser. That's what they're going to say. The video doesn't prove that he did or didn't, because you can't see it. But even if he did, the thing that Schurr knows is that he himself, Schurr, pulled the trigger of that taser twice. So when and the last one went into the ground, so the probe came out. There's only 2 shots in a taser. So Schurr knew when he did that, taser's ineffective. The only thing else a taser can do then is what's called a stun provision, if you will, stun gun, and it has to be touching the skin. Sorry, Peter. Touching the skin, and he can then pull the trigger, but that's only if a person like Patrick had been trained on taser, which he wasn't, and knew how to use it, and if the taser would have actually responded to him pulling. And this particular taser model was one that actually had certain safety features that everyone's going to learn about, where Schurr knew that taser was out of the picture. Therefore, what, and then let's talk about for a quick second, what if it would have been stunned? How is that a deadly weapon? And the answer is it's not. So if there is any other force that Schurr could have used short of blowing my client's head off from the back, like an execution type style gunshot wound, okay? If there's any other force lesser than that that was available to him under state and federal law, Schurr had the obligation to use that lesser force. Lawyer answers, but the answer really lies in the facts. And I think the jury's going to see through what his testimony is going to be and what his lawyer is going to argue. And if you're on top of somebody and they're on their hands and knees and it's 8:30 in the morning, broad daylight, you can hear sirens coming because your backup is right down the street, you do not blow their head off.
Yes, sir. My next question, now that a trial date has been confirmed, how significant is this moment for the Lyoya family and your legal team?
Well, more importantly than my legal team, the Lyoya family has been waiting for this for 3 years, a week ago Friday. So April 4th was the 3-year, and I hate using the term anniversary for such a tragic event, but that's the day that their son was murdered in their eyes. So taking 3 years, the delay, the denial, the defense of the officer feels like, and Peter will certainly address this when you ask him, feels like to them a betrayal. If, God forbid, the roles were reversed, do you think Patrick Lyoya would have waited 3 years before being held on trial for shooting and killing an officer? We all know better. It would have, that trial would have been done within months. No appeals, none of this crap. So this is what happens when an officer is involved. Everything moves more slowly. The officer's been out on bond the entire time, living wherever he's living. Well, my client buried their son and he remains 6 feet underneath the headstone. Not been a, to say the very least, it's a tragedy upon tragedy every day that they've been waiting for their justice.
Yes, sir. I just have about 3 more questions for you before I move over to Mr. Lyoya. How would you characterize the importance of this case, not just for the Lyoya family, but for law enforcement accountability cases across Michigan and the country?
Let me go even bigger. I think if the United States truly believes that we are the home of the free, right, and home of the brave, and if we really have justice, see somebody shot from behind in the head when they did not have a gun and we're not threatening imminently the life of an officer. And for there to be anything other than a guilty verdict is going to be, I think, a tough pill to swallow. And I think the entire criminal, let alone in the civil jurisprudence system, the jury systems are really on trial here. And that's why we are so glad that the trial judge in the criminal case has allowed the camera to come on in and live streaming so that everybody can see and hear the testimony themselves, just like we watched in George Floyd and that criminal trial that was in Minneapolis. So people can judge for themselves, not just the video, but the facts and the circumstances of the witnesses. And we welcome that. Justice has to be transparent. And one of the things that we lack in our country is transparency, especially with police-involved murders and shootings and deaths. So here, it's going to be on full display. I think it's critical. And I think that this case is just as important as George Floyd and just as important as the other cases, tragically, that we've seen befall other families across the country. And slowly, there's been a turn that now something's changed. We're starting to actually try criminally the officers doing this. Back in the day, never were their charges brought. So we give Prosecutor Becker a shout out and credit for that. And now we believe that justice will prevail.
What challenges, if you can speak on, do you anticipate as the trial begins, both legally and emotionally for the family?
I'll do the last one, the latter of the two. For the family, it's going to be an emotional challenge 24/7, just like it has been for the last 3 years. But having to listen to and see their son being murdered on video over and over again, hearing people come in and defend the actions of Schurr that we don't believe, I call it defending the indefensible, don't believe that they're justified, but hearing people say that they were, it's going to be difficult. And obviously we're all going to be there with the family, supporting them as much as we can through what I think is going to be literally an impossible journey for them. Legally, that's something I would let the criminal lawyers talk about. I'm not a criminal lawyer, I'm a civil lawyer, but that's something they'll be fighting about. And we know this, that whoever wins or loses, if there's a loss in the defense side, if Schurr is convicted, we know there's going to be yet another appeal. And we know if he loses there, there's going to be another appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court. That's just a matter of their tactics. But we still believe the jury will do the right thing. Justice will prevail.
And second to last question kind of resembles the previous one. In your view, what message could a conviction in this case send about how use of force cases involving police officers are handled in court?
That police officers are not above the law, that even though they have a badge and they have a gun, doesn't mean that they can use that gun for whatever reason they want, when they want, and get away with it. So I think it sends a huge message. I think what it will also do is send a huge message to the city of Grand Rapids Police Department, who after this atrocity, even though they had the video, obviously had the video on the day of the shooting, April 4, put him on Schurr on administrative leave, paying him, and did nothing to fire him for a month until County Prosecutor Becker stepped up and did the right thing and criminally charged him. Then Grand Rapids came in and suspended him without pay. And then what they do? They allowed him to retire with full benefits. Now, last time I knew, if you're going to terminate somebody, you don't get full benefits. That's what Schurr got here. Sends a horrible message to the rest of the police officers that if you shoot somebody in the back of the head and kill them and get criminally prosecuted, don't worry, we got your back. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Horrible message. And that's one of the reasons why we have so many police shootings across the country, because that is the message that is being sent by administration and municipalities to their officers. And until that changes, I think you're going to see a continuation of this pandemic of officer-involved shootings, but especially against people of color.
And my last question before I get to Mr. Lyoya, is there anything else that you would like to add that I didn't ask?
Well, Commissioner Womack is going to speak to this much better than me, but on behalf of the family, on behalf of my co-counsel Ben Crump, his law firm, and our entire legal team here at Ben Johnson Law, we absolutely encourage and we literally beg everybody on both sides, no matter who you support or nobody right now, but maybe you garner that support during trial because of the testimony. Please, no violence. Please be respectful that this is a court and legal process. The family has done everything that they know how to do to be patient in this impossible 3-year delay, but we're here now. Please let the court and jury do what they do, and we believe that justice will prevail ultimately. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner Womack, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I will pick up where Mr. Van Johnson left off. I was a elected official, boots on the ground after the George Floyd incident, and saw the riots in Grand Rapids, and was doing all I could in the middle of the streets to try to help bring that to an end that night. And because of Van Johnson and Ben Crump's immediately involvement in this, it gave a message to the community that this would probably have its day in court, which our community is so happy. And I think that is one of the reasons that we had peace before the trial, and we'll continue to ask for peace during the trial and after the trial.
I will make sure to convey that message. I just have 3 questions for Mr. Lyoya. First of all, my deepest condolences. I'm sorry if you've already been asked some of these questions. I don't mean to bring back any heartfelt feelings. My first question, the community just recognized the 3-year anniversary of your son's passing. What is it like for you to see so much of the community supporting you, and then for the support for your family as well? And then what do you say to those who are saying the shooting was justified because he resisted?
Na nasema ya siporo yuko napata ku community na wale wenye biko wanaenda kusema si kama Patrick kupigwa masasi ilikuwa bali iko justifiable. I would like first to say thank you so much to the community, to everybody that who have stood with us in the past, now, and in the future. I would like to say thank you to Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Womack, and to everybody that has been fighting for my son to get the justice that he deserves. Okay, first I would like to say to those people who are saying that the killing and the shooting of Patrick was very justifiable. They don't know Patrick the way I know him. I raised my son. My son was a good man. They did everything to tarnish his reputation, his name. They went after the car that was driving. They dig deep and down, try to get some dirt on him, but so far they haven't proven anything. My son did not do anything wrong to deserve to be killed and to be shot on the back of his head by the police officer. So these people that are coming against him, my son is already dead, he's buried. That's one thing that is really painful to me, to see that they keep tarnishing and destroying the reputation of my son, talking bad about someone who's already gone. That is not good, because I believe if Patrick was the one who did that to the police, to Schurr, no matter how Schurr bad was, they will never bring the dirt of Schurr, try to justify Schurr that. No matter how bad Schurr was, no matter how bad this officer was, they will never bring that. But they're trying to do everything to justify this man. That is so painful to me. It's like they're putting again a knife in my heart because of what has happened. I've already lost my son. It did not deserve to die. It did not.
And let me address real quickly, if you don't mind, when you hear folks that are supporting the officer, in this case, the former officer, who's no longer an officer, as you know, they say all Patrick had to do was comply. When Schurr takes that witness stand, which he surely will in this case, when he does, he will admit, when Prosecutor Becker asks him, you admit that under the law, you cannot shoot and kill Patrick Lyoya simply because he was resisting your arrest. Can you? Answer will be correct. Not just will Schurr admit that. Every officer who's called on that witness stand, who's telling the truth, will admit that under the law, simply because somebody resists does not mean that the officer can kill them. That is what we call that black letter law. Black letter means it's clear. There's no debate. So I read that all the time. And it's what scares me is there are people out there that think that, even though the law is clear and the officers themselves have to admit, and always do in these cases, since, as you know, I've been doing them for over 30 years, They always admit they know they can't do that. They can only use that deadly force when they're in fear for their life at that second, and if they didn't kill that person would kill them. That's what happened. That's what they're going to say happened here, which we don't believe the evidence supports. But simply because there was someone runs away, simply because someone resists, absolutely 100% under the law cannot be used simply to justify killing.
Mr. Lyoya, if you don't mind me asking, where were you when you found out what happened to your son, and what has the healing process been for you and your family like since then, if you've been able to even start that process?
Okay, when I got the news, I was at work. I saw two cars. It was a police officer car. They came, they called me outside, and they asked me a question. Are you Peter Lyoya? I say yes, and they asked me a question. Do you know Patrick Lyoya? I say, yes, I do know Patrick. He's my son. And they say, you know what, we want to tell you that your son has been, they didn't use the word killed, they just say he died. He didn't find out how he died, but they just say he died. And they told him, I said, rapid, if you don't have the strength to drive, you can find someone else to take you there. So basically what he's saying, he was at work when they came and they told him about that news.
Yeah, now,
Okay, going after what you asked me a question about the healing process. It's hard. It's very, very hard for us to go because even though we are fighting the government, the justice is taking too long. You know, my heart is still bleeding. The family is still hurting. And I don't know how long it's going to take for us to be healed. Because one thing I do know, that we will fight until when we get the true justice. We will fight till to the end.
And my last question, if your son was still alive, if he had survived this incident, what's something you'd like to say to him?
hiyo ni jibu niulizo uko nguvu sana kujilia.
What can I say? This is a hard question because it's one thing that I never expected in my life. And it's one thing I'm trying to do my best to don't think. Why? Because I have no word first, but what I can explain to you, in my culture, when you give birth to a son, your firstborn son, kid is a son, is a boy or a male, you are raising a replacement in the family who's going to take your place. And the death of Patrick has brought a deep emptiness in our family. There's no way we can replace him. There's no way we can change. Even if I give birth to someone else today, it will never be Patrick. Because I was already seeing him, and when I was talking to him, I addressed him like the head of the family. And the worst thing that hurt me the most every time when I hear this is I know that my son died because of the color of his skin. That's why Patrick died. Because if Patrick was white, I guarantee you 100% that Patrick was not going to be dead. And that's one thing I could ever tell him. Maybe if I have the chance, I would tell him, if he was a white boy or a white man in this country, I guarantee you that it was going to be very hard for you to die into the hand of the police. He died because of the color of his skin.
Is there anything else Mr. Lyoya wants to say that I didn't ask before I let you gentlemen go?
The only thing that I'm going to add is just we are going to trial on the 28th of April. I'm asking just for justice. Justice for Patrick. That's it. Nothing else. Is just justice for Patrick.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for taking time for me today. I really appreciate it.